This government meeting is brought to you by Eastworks and our local cable subscribers.
So good evening. This is the City Council Ordinance meeting for November 12th. Time is 6 p.m. Tonight we're going to be talking about the additions to the short-term rental provided by our fire department and the building inspector. Because we have already voted on all the other changes of this, I'd like to just focus our conversation on those items this evening. So what would be really helpful is I have the document up on the screen here. So I'm hoping that we can have our fire department speak to the changes that they are looking to add, or the additions that they'd like to add. So perhaps you could kind of walk us through that, and then counselors, when you're ready, or if you have questions, let me know and we can address those.
So we'll start with the short-term rentals shall be subject to mandatory joint inspection annually by the building department, fire department, health department, and or other duly authorized authority from the city. Page 5.
Page 5. So we're looking at
CI.
C. There you go.
In addition, each short-term rental shall undergo a fire safety inspection by the fire department prior to initial rental offering. 2, there shall be at least one 5-pound ABC fire extinguisher installed and maintained in accordance with 527 CMR 1, which is the Massachusetts Comprehensive Fire Code, and the local authority having jurisdiction. There shall be a fully stocked first aid kit that contains at a minimum 4x4 inch gauze pads to 8x10 inch gauze pads, a box of adhesive bandages, band-aids, 1 package of gauze roller bandages at least 2 inches wide, 2 triangle bandages, adhesive tape, and latex gloves, which is the basic first aid kit. There shall be installed a whole house smoke alarm system which shall incorporate carbon monoxide detection. The system shall be installed to the current Massachusetts building code. Such a system shall be monitored 24/7 by an approved central station monitoring company. The alarm system shall be tested and inspected by an approved, authorized, licensed individual. Said report shall be sent yearly to the Easthampton Fire Department. The owner or operator of the short-term rental shall provide the fire department with an accurate floor plan of the dwelling, identifying all sleeping areas, exits, and locations of fire safety equipment. A copy of this plan shall also be displayed prominently within the rental unit for the benefit of the occupants. The owner or operator of the short-term rental shall post emergency information in a conspicuous location within the unit. The posting shall include the property address, emergency contact information for the owner or property manager, who can be reached at all times during occupancy, and clear instructions for evacuation in the event of fire or other emergency. Any short-term rentals that fall under the provisions under MGL 148, Section 28H, which the city has adopted, shall be equipped with an automatic sprinkler system. And the Easthampton Fire Department shall be responsible for the enforcement of all provisions of 4-50.5, Section C.
Questions? Oh, sorry.
Oh, no, I was just going to say, so we went through and really looked to evaluate, and, you know, in the fire code right now, there's no provisions for short-term rentals, and there's actually an exclusion for 1- and 2-family homes. But the safety the safety issues aren't addressed in the fire code, unfortunately. A lot of times what we see in our industry is things will come out, whether it be technology or ideas will come out and will be public and used before there's actually code written for it. And then there's the catch up. Unfortunately, a lot of times it's because of tragedy that happens. And then there's a catch up with the code with it. I'm not even sure in the next code cycle for the fire that there's going to be provisions for short-term rentals, at least in the beginning of it and such. The short-term rentals are the equivalent of a hotel and motel. And we learned early on in the early 20th century from the tragedies that happened in hotels that we needed to tighten the fire safety regulations and across the board because of the tragedies. And because of that, now when we go to hotels and motels, they are equipped with fire alarm systems, with sprinkler systems, and with various other components of the building that are designed to safeguard against fire and to make it safer for the occupants and such. The short-term rentals are becoming more and more prevalent, and they're thought to probably by 2030 to even double. And it's getting to the point where they're almost outpacing hotels and motels as far as stays go and such. These are they should be really regulated similar to hotels and motels. We're talking now going into a commercial type of business. That's what's happening here. So we really looked at this hard and we said, what can we do in Easthampton to really make these places safe for the people who are staying in them. So that's the reason why we came up with the information we did. So any questions you have, I'd be more than happy to address them and talk about it.
Questions?
I have one question. When it says there shall be installed a whole house smoke alarm system, would that be where all of the smoke alarms are connected, or can you have separate smoke alarms?
Yes. So what that's going to be is that's going to be a residential type of low voltage smoke alarm system. So the smoke alarms and the carbon monoxide alarms will all be wired in to like a central hub, and there'll be an indicator panel, and that will be monitored 24/7. So the smoke alarm goes off, it's going to automatically call into a central station. That central station will immediately call the fire department. If there's a carbon monoxide event in the building, then it will automatically call the fire department and it will monitor it. The nice thing about these, there's a lot of nice things about these systems. One is if anybody tries to tamper with it, it's going to send a supervisory signal to the central station, which in turn is going to alert the homeowner or the responsible party also if somebody tries to tamper with them. Also having the provision in there that every year that it be tested by a qualified individual. So basically, we didn't want to go into like a commercial alarm system. We felt that a residential system would be sufficient for this. They're very, very similar in how they operate. So that's kind of what the whole house system would be, and it would be to the current code. So currently when you build a house, you have to have smoke alarms in every bedroom, and then outside the bedrooms you have to have smoke alarms and carbon monoxide detection on every level within 10 feet of the bedroom doors. And on top of that also is the provision that you also need heat detection in the garages, because we've had fires in garages. And so if something happens in a garage, and we want that to wake the occupants at 2 a.m, and the system will do that. So that's another thing that's very important too, is to have the heat detection in the garages.
So from a cost perspective, how much would that typically run someone to install this type of fire alarm?
It would probably run about $5,000. Went in.
Yes.
Yeah. So, I recently stayed in Maine. We went with some friends. We stayed for 4 days, and I paid $1,450 to stay in a short-term rental. So, you know, the revenue to come in from is absolutely there to justify it. And the other thing too is, as far as from a liability, as far as the owner goes, it's really saving the owner from a liability standpoint. You know, I've got a couple instances here. We can talk about, you know, some of the tragedies that have happened recently in the short-term rentals, and it's only going to get worse. Family of six, 6 people died. A family in Wisconsin recently, in 2024. In Clifton, New York, we had 2 people die. Again, no working smoke alarms in there. I don't feel that single station smoke alarms, having battery operated smoke alarms in these units is appropriate when you're renting them out. And that's why we would require the whole house smoke alarm system. So much safer.
Just
Reliable.
a note on that is they are going to save a little money because I noticed that the requirement of a landline was taken out, probably because now they would have the direct line to your station.
They would have nowadays what happens is it's all by cell. So what happens is they'll put a cellular device in. So there's a monthly charge for that, you know, for monitoring in the cell and stuff. And the cell will automatically, it's so quick now. Some of these alarms, you know, we're getting in under a minute to the station. So they work really well and such. I'm not sure about the residential, but like the commercial alarms even go redundantly. So you'll have 2 different carriers. So you'll have like a Verizon and an AT&T carrier on 2 different ones. So if one fails, the other one will pick it up and such. But so they're just so much more safer. They provide a lot more protection for the occupants and for the property. And again, liability on the owner. These folks here, the owners are getting sued for these deaths and stuff about these people.
So for now, we're just gonna have questions for amongst the counselors, just so you're good. I just want to make sure. Counselor Kozinski, you had a question?
First question is, talked about exclusions in the state proposed or maybe coming soon. No, the current regulations, the fire regulations, and you don't know what new regulations will bring, but they may very well not bring any short-term rentals at this point. In Easthampton, if I owned a single family or a 2-family home, would these be excluded from the regulations that you just read, or would they have to be?
It depends the year it was built. So depending on the year that it was built. So before 1975, there was no building code. So right now in the state of Massachusetts, when you sell a home, you have to have working smoke alarms, and it depends on the year that the house was built on the coverage. So if you have pre-75, then you have to have battery operated sealed 10-year smoke alarms in usually the common outside.
Spaces.
Yeah, in the appropriate spaces. If you have something that was built, you know, 75 to like 97, now it gets into hardwired, and then after 97, now we're talking about smoke alarms in the bedrooms. So it depends on the year, and then it changes. Also, it adds in the garage heat detection in the mid-2000s.
Right.
So it depends on what year the house was built to the level of protection that's required.
So an owner who said, I think I'd like to try a short-term rental, could do so without the expense of hardwiring a new system if they had a house built prior to 1975 that they were renting.
If there was
By using the 10-year sealed batteries in the appropriate locations. So,
without an ordinance requiring it, I mean, there's nothing requiring. So
the way you read this ordinance, is it required?
Yes.
Yes, this would be required to have a whole house alarm system.
So in Easthampton, you could live in a house that doesn't require hardwiring because it met the code at the time it was built.
Correct.
But in order to have a short-term rental, you'd have to have the $5,000 or more expense of installing a hardwired system. If I was going to rent, if someone were to rent 1 bedroom.
Correct, because now,
Is that correct?
because now you're shifting the use of the building, right? So the building is not now my home and I'm living in it. Now I'm renting this out, so it's like a hotel motel. So that's why there needs to be this type of protection in it. I'd like to see everyone you have this type of protection in it, you know, too, but the code doesn't, you know.
The same
require that.
with the sprinkler systems.
So the spring
So would the homeowner have to put in a new sprinkler system
for,
into the unit under this ordinance?
Depends.
so,
I mean, I can answer that question.
Yeah.
You're asking the wrong person the question.
Okay,
So ask me the question. Yeah, it depends. So, where things stand now in the building code is, it depends on the circumstances. It says point blank, any building or portion of the building used for short-term rental shall be sprinkled. Right? But then it'll go on to the interpretation of it from the state, a memorandum with a flow chart, trying to help inspectors deal with this. You know, there's a guidance kind of thing. Like if it's it's also, and you asked Dan, you said, so if I rented just one room in my house, I'd have to do the alarm system. Well, that's the kind of, it depends kind of answer that you get, because it really, for me, I'll just speak from my part of it for the building code. The default is sprinklers. However, most of the rentals are taking place in existing buildings. There's an existing building code. Existing building code gives me the authority to accept an alternative to the sprinklers that meets the intent and level of safety as sprinklers might do. Now in fact, most of the building inspectors now that I've spoken to are not requiring sprinklers. They're looking at situation by situation. One starting point might be a whole house, not owner occupied, that was built in the 1900s, you know, prior to 72. So therefore, there's not even a smoke alarms required if you go by, you know, using the track that the fire code uses for inspections. But it is recognized that what's required for new 1 or 2 family dwellings right now is vastly improved over then. You know, as Dan was saying, as events occur, code catches up. So now when you build a new house, you have to have them in the bedrooms. You have to have them in the hallways. They all communicate with each other. There's a heat detector in the garage. That's better, right? I mean, that's better for life safety. That's universally recognized in building code and fire code. And actually, smoke detector placement, heat detector, that's in building code as well. So going back to sprinklers, though, I would not be, and I've already done this twice in another town, not required sprinklers because it wasn't warranted. It just was like a smaller place. One was a single room in a home. No sprinklers in the home. So what was proposed and what I accepted, and the fire captain there as well, actually the fire chief in that town, was an alarm system, just like Dan is describing. It makes sense because it's cheaper than sprinklers. It saves lives. It's demonstrated to save lives. That's why people do alarm systems. And why wouldn't you be expected to pay something to use a property in a commercial way? You talk about if you live in a house, you live there. That's your home. Now you start using, you introduce a commercial component, inviting people who have never been to your home to sleep there. If something goes wrong in the middle of the night, well, they have the same sensibilities about getting out of the house quickly and safely as you do. No, you live there. That's why there's a difference in the code between transient occupancy and non-transient occupancy. There's a break there. Once you get into primarily transient occupied buildings, that's a different classification. That's no longer a 1 or 2 family dwelling. that is, as Dan was saying, is more in the order of a motel. So, yeah, we can keep talking about what's the bottom line, what's it going to cost somebody who has a business enterprise in their home as being, well, that's prohibitive. But it is a business, and it's about safety. It's about keeping people safe and not having as many of these tragedies occur. These people checked into this place in New York. They could see smoke detectors. Problem is, they didn't work. With a monitored alarm system, you know that it doesn't work. You can look at the panel. It'll tell you if something's not working. The monitoring company can know right away if a smoke detector in the back, you could have a big sprawling home, back 40 somewhere in the house, smoke detector is out. They know this. So that's why it's important. I mean, there have not been any tragedies in Easthampton yet, but once they hit, then everybody goes, oh my gosh, the fingers start pointing, like who knew what when and why didn't they do something about it? I think right now, I have been trying to do something about it through these discussions and gotten very little traction. And now Dan is doing the same thing. And it sounds like we're going to talk about money. How much money does it cost for this investment into my business enterprise, which is tax deductible, an insurance break, once you install things like this, and it's safe. It keeps people safe. So it depends. A whole house, I would tend to go to for sprinklers. If it's a big house and it's not owner occupied, I would probably want to see it sprinkled. A room in a home, no, not at all. But I could. I mean, I could ask for it and somebody could say, I'm not doing that. We could go to BBRS, have a hearing in front of them at the state level, and you could make an argument as to why you're not going to do what the building code says, because you feel like you know better somehow. And these codes have come around because people have met for hours, thousands of hours, over years, looking at all the data and saying, this is going to work. This is the minimum. By the way, there are lobbyists at the table of all of these code sessions, and they're saying, oh, we don't want to do that. Home builders of Western Mass, it's going to cost us money, 1% per building more. That's how much it's going to cost us to make it safer. And that's why, by the way, there are no sprinklers for 1 and 2 family dwellings yet, even though it's in the International Residential Code. Massachusetts amends it out. Other states don't. So I think it's pretty reasonable to say if you're going to go beyond using your home as nothing more than a 1 or 2 family dwelling, and now you're short-terming it, you should be expected to do something that gets you closer to being safer for the people that are staying there.
I have a question, Ray.
Yeah, sure.
I'm asking this because you said that you were able to get to a home relatively quickly with the monitored system. Is that as efficient in terms of life-saving as a sprinkler system?
No, it can never be because a sprinkler system in a home like that is designed for life safety, and it's designed so people get out. That's the main thing it's designed for in that particular situation. Not necessarily to put out the fire or to save the property, which it probably will, but if they're made in life safety for them to get out. Is it as comparable? I mean, I don't think it is. A sprinkler system is going to immediately put out the fire. I think both of them together is the best, scenario and stuff. I don't know how I would gauge like a sprinkler and a fire alarm system as far as you could do on a sprinkler system is more effective.
It is. It's like having a firefighter with a charge hose line right there at your fingertips.
Yeah, I'm just asking because he made the comment of like, you got there under a minute, so it seems like.
Yeah, so and the main thing too is, with the fire alarm system too, is it's going to get the people out, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what we're finding is the fires of today in residential homes are not like the fires 40 years ago. We had the legacy furniture, we had cotton and natural natural fibers and stuff. When you had fires back 40, 50 years ago, fires took they took longer to grow, and you had time to get out. Okay. Today you don't. You may have had 10, 15 minutes, depending on how the fire started in the legacy home like that. Didn't have all this synthetic stuff. All this synthetic stuff in the house now. Now we're looking at 2, 3, 4 minutes to get out of a house. So early notification is extremely important and stuff. And just having battery operated smoke alarms that nobody inspects or nobody takes care of, or that somebody can take down and throw out because they're smoking because they decided to smoke something in there, they want to take it down. I mean, JP knows as a realtor going in these houses, and when these houses are sold, if somebody's lived in this house for like 30, 40 years, sometimes, you find smoke alarms that are 10, 20, 30 years old without batteries and stuff, and what have you. I want to speak on a 26H a little bit, just so they know the difference here. So again, I just want to speak on 148 26H. So you have the sprinkler requirements that Dave talked about from the building code, but under the fire code, under chapter 148, 26H, which the city adopted in 2005, we have a sprinkler requirement in there, and that sprinkler requirement is for like lodging houses. And the Sprinkler Board of Appeals of Massachusetts decided that short-term rental is considered a lodging house under this law. So what the law says is basically, if you rent to 6 or more people that are not to the second kindred, then you have to have a sprinkler system in the house. That's separate from the building code. That's under the fire code. And to be honest with you, actually, use the terminology wrong. It's actually law. It's 148. 26H, it's actually law, so it's not even code. So that's absolutely required. And again, is there an appeal process for that? There is an appeal process for that to go to the Sprinkler Appeals Board. If you wanted to go that route, if that happens to be, but just know if you are renting to 6 or more people that aren't to the second kindred, that you fall under that, you have to sprinkle under the fire code, not the building code. Stuff. So I just want to make that clear. That law is already out there. We don't really have much say on that because that's what it is. But you do have the process where you could go to the appeals board if you wanted to for that. So,
But if you're just renting to 5 people, you don't have to have a sprinkler system.
under the fire code, no.
Just to,
Under 140, yeah, under 148, no.
Mhm.
Yeah,
it's a conversation we've had before regarding that.
yeah. And again, I didn't want to go into, I think I mentioned it before, I didn't want to go into the expense of a commercial system. I thought the residential system would be perfect. And I've talked with alarm alarm technicians who are a lot more knowledgeable, who do this for a living and stuff. And they agreed with me that that would be the systems now are very reliable and such. So
Wireless systems? Were they all hardwired?
there might be some in the residential realm with the lithium batteries. There possibly might be. I believe I'm not specifically sure how that works, but I think there is some wireless in there. So could there potentially be somewhere where they would have difficulty getting wire in? Possibly. But again, the other thing too is it's low voltage wire, so it's smaller wire. It's not like 120 volt wire that would be running. So it would be a lot easier to run smaller wire, kind of like doorbell wire almost, really smaller wire to run in a home and such. So, yeah.
So I have another question.
Yeah, of
So
course.
regarding the wired system for the fire department, one of the conversations that we had, and this, I think, is part of what you started to address, was finding alternative means.
Mhm.
And what we had talked about was half the year minus 1 day,
Mhm.
right? We might be apt to find the alternative. So if I understand this would be a suitable alternative to not having to have a sprinkler system, for example.
Correct. No, and I would like to say, yeah, when Dan first brought this up to me, because it was something an alternative route that I have already implemented in other places that, because sprinklers, frankly, if you have sprinklers, there's no requirement to have alarms associated with them. So it's just a sprinkler system. And there are stories out there about people just playing around, and kids throwing a frisbee inside the house. Hit a sprinkler head, it popped. A lot of water damage, bunch of water damage. So alarm systems don't cause that kind of damage, for one thing. When you look at the reasons for sprinklers, prevents flashover. Dan mentioned the types of furnishings that are in most homes. They catch pretty fast. Burst into flames just from adjacent heat. So the sprinklers will do that. I think statistically, on average, it gives people about 11 minutes to get out safely, Well, but if you have a room, like one room in a house at the end of a house, and there's a door right to the outside, the room's only 20 by 20, how long is it going to take you to get out of the house, right out the door? So the alarm system is something that I would very much accept in lieu of sprinklers for most situations. Let's say I'm more concerned about especially large, non-owner occupied, well, just generally non-owner occupied. Somebody shows up, they open a lockbox, they get the key, they're there, nobody's around, they're unfamiliar with the house, there's nothing in place. Maybe sprinklers would be appropriate for that situation. But I can't possibly know, and no inspector could, without going into places. It's a case by case kind of thing. What's the configuration? How many doors out of a place? What's it like? The one single room place I did also require a strobe alarm in the room. That's just like part of an alarm system. You've seen them in commercial systems. They're usually red. Something goes down, they start strobing, or they make a very loud horn sound. So this also works for people who might be hard of hearing or blind, because you've got two means for them to be notified. For residential purposes, they're smaller, they're white, they blend in. And that's only because of the room is located down a hallway. You went down a hallway, hanging right, you're in another room. How do you get out? So there was an emergency light and a horn strobe. Emergency light in the hallway, horn strobe in the room. Just added onto the alarm system. No sprinklers. So I would be inclined in almost every case to not, I would take the alternative to be an alarm system. And then Dan was just a couple days ago telling me this is something he was going to propose to add in. And I thought it makes sense to me. And it really simplifies a lot of that kind of work, trying to determine how to apply the building code.
Yeah. Well, I'm sorry.
No.
That
Wanna
early,
add on to that?
that early detection and warning is so important. And when we look at these single family homes, you could have a ranch, or you could have a 3-story house. You don't know what it is. But remember that the single family homes, right, they're not designed with 2 means of egress either. So that's an issue, is the egress can be an issue also of people getting out. And that's what happened, I believe, in one of these, was an egress issue, getting out from the 2nd floor. So if you got a fire at the bottom of the stairs and stuff that's starting to consume something, that needs to be alerted right away, and they need to find another way out. Another reason why we have to do these inspections, because we got to make sure that the windows are working properly too in these houses, make sure that they're opening, make sure that they're the right size, at least a minimum size, that people can get out. So these are some of the other things that we really need to look at, but they kind of work in conjunction with an alarm system like this. Again, I can't stress enough that early detection and early warning to exit that home.
And so, the second question. So, if you're more than 50% of the year, right, this would not satisfy you as an alternative for being, regardless of the size of the house, or would this in any way, if we were to require this particular system where it's connected to the fire department, would you be willing to approve or?
No, I would still lean in that direction, and for a couple of reasons. One, right now, and if you build a new single-family home, you'd have to have what we described earlier with all the smoke detectors, CO detectors. They're all hardwired. They pull energy from the building, but they communicate wirelessly. So that was a big advancement for anybody who doesn't know. In the old days, it was a big fat wire. You had to snake through all kinds of stuff because to communicate all the devices to get them the same communication, it required another conductor. Well, now that can be done wirelessly, Wi-Fi. So each individual unit just draws energy from the building, but they communicate through Wi-Fi signal. So if this one goes off, they all go off. Hopefully, that's what's supposed to happen. One of those is carbon monoxide detection. So what I like about the alarm system, a monitor alarm system, is if a CO device fails, you'll know it. More importantly, if it goes off, then first responders can show up and maybe save a life. Somebody, a family perhaps, could be asleep, overcome by CO. Who's going to know if it's just going off in the house and the house is, 3 houses, 4 houses down, people don't hear it outside the house. A family could die inside the house. Monitor system will get first responders there to hopefully rescue people, test the level of CO in the house. It could be nothing at all. It could just be, but it's worth looking into.
So I just want to make sure you answered the question that I wanted you to answer.
Okay.
So before, this was an alternative if it was less than 50% of the year and they were doing a short-term rental.
Right.
Is this okay for this system if we have this in this ordinance for people to do more than 50% of the year? So they were to be able to do whatever the minimum we talked about was like 300 days?
That's, and again, it's a case by case, it's a maybe. It's
Okay.
a maybe.
Okay.
Because, and for anybody who doesn't know why the 50%, half a year or more than half a year makes a difference, is because in building code, the principal use of a building is determined by, is the use that it's used mostly for.
Mhm.
So, and accessory uses are those that are subordinate to in size and scope. So if I have a single family home and I rent a short-term 2 rooms in the house, it's only 40% of the dwelling, just part of it. But I'm there, I live in the house. So if I have a whole house, I'm not there, non-owner occupied, and that's rented for more than half a year. The use of that house now is, the principal use is short-term renting. It's transient lodging. That's a different building use classification and building code. It gets treated completely differently. Right away, you're looking at sprinklers, no matter what. So again, I'm trying to answer your question.
Yeah, it's
If I
okay.
see a small house, for instance, part of this draft speaks to two dwellings on the same property or something, Well, building code doesn't see it that way. You're just talking about, it's not even zoning. This is ordinance, right? But building code looks at a building. It's either a single family, a 2-family, a multifamily, a building. If you have a separate building, it doesn't matter if it's on the same parcel or not. Separate building entirely. An ADU is a separate single-family dwelling. That's rented, you don't occupy it, it's there, but it's only 900 square feet. So in that case, this is where I'm trying to make the difference. You have a small house, not owner occupied. Does it rise to the level of requiring sprinklers? I wouldn't think so. Again, it's got 2 doors, and ADU still has to have 2 means of egress, but its maximum size is like 900 feet. So nobody's going to get lost in there. And you can make your way out pretty quickly, but I think it still warrants a call to the fire department to show up. So probably not, but a big house, a really big house, I don't know. I just, how it's laid out, you know? Even a small house with, you know, as I was describing, a room in the center of the house going down 2 hallways. That's different from a small house where the room has a door to the outside. It really just depends. So I want to work with people. I don't like sprinklers myself. I mean, I know I'm the company of firefighters.
We won't tell them what you just
They
said.
do an awful lot of damage for things that can, you know, just accidental type stuff. I've issued permits for houses that have suffered water damage, hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of damage. It's unbelievable. You could take a place down and build it new, but you don't. Insurance companies pay for this stuff. Alarm systems don't do that. Did I answer it at all?
Yeah.
Oh, good. Okay.
Any other questions? This battery is about to die, so I just want to hop down to the next thing before we can come back and ask more questions. I do have one more question, but I want to get to this other piece. In section 4-50.6 compliance, there's a couple of additions. Conducting health, fire and life. So that's fire and life is added. And then our building inspector also made a clarification under section E there with non-criminal disposition, MGL, chapter 40, section 21D, before it just said D. So the addition of 21 was added there just so that was provided that clarification. So does anyone have any questions regarding that?
Can you just repeat that really quick?
Yep, it's up on the screen there too, but under section E, violations of this ordinance may be subjected. But so there's the addition of non-criminal disposition, MGL, chapter 40, section, the addition of 21B. Is there any questions about that? I think I just want to ask one clarifying question, and this has to do with the lodging house piece. On page 2 of this document, a property license, so under short-term rental definition, says a property license, bed and breakfast, hotel, motel, or lodging house, as those used are defined and permitted under the Easthampton zoning ordinance, shall not be considered a short-term rental. So then the question then for me is, for number 7, short-term rental shall comply with the following requirements under C. So number 7, which you had already discussed, any short-term rentals that fall under the provisions of MGL 148, section 26H shall be equipped with an automatic sprinkler system. And that is described, those are lodging houses, but lodging houses are not short-term rentals. So would that even apply to this?
You have to look at each use within the context of the regulation that, like, because I didn't understand before, but now that Dan has explained it, it's under the sprinkler code, or
Right,
the sprinkler law, a lodging house, a short-term rental is considered a lodging.
definition for, yeah.
Yeah, but in our zoning, a lodging house is different.
Right.
Okay.
Thank you. Yes.
And likewise in building code, which is why in building code it says it includes lodging house. It will say a lodging house used as a short-term rental. So, you know, and that's after 64G says that a short-term rental is not a hotel, not a lodging house. It's pretty confusing, but the point altogether, and especially in context, is that a short-term rental needs to be treated differently than one or two family dwelling.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that we're providing that clarification.
Yeah, so I just would add, short-term rentals will be allowed in way more locations than lodging houses will under our zoning ordinance. And that's sort of, I think, the distinction that we're making in our definition specifically versus the state laws or the scheme of what is and isn't a lodging house. Other questions?
The thing to, oh, sorry, the other thing to think about too is the tax, right? The hotel motel tax, when you pay that as a patron, right? That tax money is going towards, you know, the code, the enforcement of making sure that that hotel motel is safe and stuff by officials. Whereas, you know, a short-term rental is also collecting that, but they're not seeing that. The people who are renting that aren't seeing that enforcement, aren't seeing that safety level, you know, from their tax money that as a person paying it in a hotel and motel. So just a point to. So.
Other questions? Yeah, I just want to make sure that. Does anyone else have any questions related to these items that we're discussing?
So I think just one of those little typo things on page 6. There's
Oh yeah, I've circled, yeah, a bunch of these.
So on page 5, C. And I was just curious, after saying short-term rentals should be subject to a mandatory joint inspection annually by these 3 plans. Then it says, in addition, each short-term rental shall undergo a fire safety inspection by the fire department prior to initial rental offering. But shouldn't it just say they shall undergo an inspection by those 3 aforementioned departments? Like right now, if somebody is running an Airbnb that is just below standard in some other way, there's a greasy kitchen or there's a missing wall, whatever, things that don't fall under fire department. So I just didn't understand why all 3 departments were mentioned.
I put that in. I think the intent was to make sure that it had inspection before.
But we know right now people are using them.
Right.
So just all 3 departments should be like this first time. I don't know, maybe.
The fire is important. I think what Laurel's saying, wouldn't it be just important for the building and the health as
Right.
well? You know, initially before the short-term rental was
Actually,
used, realizing that there are
licensed.
already many in use right now, but there will be new ones, and the ones that are currently operating will have to be licensed, and they should, at the time of licensing, be inspected before they're used.
So when they're registered,
Yeah,
right?
when they're
So
registered, right.
So I think it could just be reworded to short-term rentals shall undergo mandatory joint inspection prior to initial rental offering and then annually thereafter.
Correct, yeah,
Yeah.
that's right.
Okay. And then strike the last sentence out.
you have
Page 5, C. I.
after 1.
One.
So right here.
In addition, short-term.
So the last sentence is stricken and then
I'll read it again. So short-term rentals shall be subject to a mandatory joint inspection by the building department, fire department, health department, and or other duly authorized authority from the city prior to initial rental offering and then annually thereafter. Same as if it's just reordering.
Any other comments, questions from the people in the room? And then I'll go to people online. Are there any comments from folks online?
Is this just
No.
general public speak or about the specific edits that you've been discussing?
Yeah, so this is about the Under section,
No, thank you though. Thanks for clarifying.
yeah. No comments. Counselors have any other final comments? Do we want to have a discussion about whether or not we want to adopt these? Well,
No. I'm not hearing any discussion from anyone in the negative about including these. And from what I'm hearing, I understand what you're saying about the building inspection and what you're doing, but I also feel it's our due diligence to ask those questions regarding how much it costs and stuff. I'm still trying to get to all of that. So I'm a little perplexed by the change in the tone that took. I don't know. I just want to make sure like we're all on the same page here, because I'm just not, I just was very surprised by that. So if what I'm hearing is right, is that me if I'm wrong? From the building code perspective, you could be requiring it that be enforced by the sprinkler system. But what you're saying is that the low voltage system serves more purpose, because in addition to the fire alarm, it also creates the carbon monoxide alarm, and it won't ruin your stuff if it goes off on accident.
But you got it. No, that's what I'm saying.
Okay. And then from the layperson's perspective, I do think that 5,000 will be a bit of a sticker shock to people. And from what I'm hearing, 5,000 would be the absolute lowest we could go while still being in the parameters of the building inspection law. Is that?
A sprinkler system would be 3 times that.
No, I'm saying for the cost of the 5,000, that is the lowest price of all the different things that we could do.
Not sure. I've not priced an alarm system. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, that was a general idea, that I had gotten from one of the alarm companies, was right around 5,000.
Okay.
That's if you already have wired in system. So if you don't have a wired in system, you'll have to pay an electrician to come and wire things in, so that will increase the cost. That's, I think you asked for if there's wireless systems. I haven't asked that question, so I don't know. I could find that out if everybody wants to know. I'm making a phone call.
It would seem to me that for some individuals, $5,000 could be, I guess, that puts a hold on whether or not this is something I would like to rent. One bedroom, my mother passed away. Can't really make it in this unit. I could rent this part-time. I'm here. I could change the beds. I could whatever, sweep it up. I don't mind having company actually every once in a while, but not all the time. So it would be something that, it's going to cost $5,000. For that person, that might be problematic. I hear that, Councilor Smith.
You might have to think about renting it
About-
long-term.
About going long-term or moving somewhere else.
So then my next question would be, and I just, is this going to also be included in long-term rentals?
No,
Okay.
no. Anything over 30 days, no.
Okay. So if someone was making the decision of whether or not to host a long-term rental or a short-term rental, from a cost perspective, the long-term rental actually has fewer costs associated with it.
Fewer upfront costs. I mean, if somebody's, I know that there are people who buy houses, who short-term rent them right off the bat. because they have the money to invest in it. To them, it's a business investment. So they'll do that right off because they know they're going to get a return on their investment pretty quickly. Whereas if you don't have the money up front, yeah, you could buy a house and rent it. People are doing that for forever, right? You can rent a house for non-transient lodging, nothing special. Just put the house up for rent, and seasonal rentals even, 2 months at a time, 3 months at a time, not affected by this, not at all. It's just the short-term renting.
The short-term rentals are bringing between $20,000 and $120,000 a year. Like I told you, for 4 days, I paid $1,450 for a short-term rental. So it is a very lucrative business and such. That's average, so could be anywhere.
Berkshires are gonna have a much higher kind of revenue as opposed to Old Fairfield.
Approximately, yes, yeah. But
Yeah.
this was a little town in Maine, not even on the coast, so.
No, I get it.
That I had. And again, we're talking about a commercial enterprise here, not a single family home anymore, so.
Yeah, I mean, when we first started this conversation, I think the tenor of the conversation was more of an emergency stopgap measure for families who need it right away. And so I think what I'm seeing as a result of all these talks is that is not a quick option for a homeowner to go into. That the restrictions that we would have for that short-term rental, even though they would seem like that would be the quicker option, actually would end up being a longer, more drawn-out option because of some of the things included. And it's important because of the larger discussion also about the difference between the short-term rentals and the long-term rentals within Easthampton, and which are on the market more, and how is our housing stock being used, which is why I'm asking these questions, because I think it all comes into this larger conversation.
I appreciate that. I think for myself, right, when part of this this entire conversation started because we were going about it the wrong way, right? There wasn't an ordinance. People were told they could do this. People have been making decisions for a number of years, right? At no fault of their own, they were just given the wrong information. And so I think people invested a lot of money to be able to do something that they thought they could do. And then all of a sudden they found out, no, you actually can't do that. And then we were kind of scrambling, trying to put this together. And so while I recognize the safety of it and all of that, I'm just on a deeply personal level, right? I'm just struggling with the fact that we allowed people to do something and they made a lot of financial investment in that. And then now we're saying they can't do that. And not that I'm saying that these are roadblocks or that these are terrible. Like I understand, I completely understand the purpose and the safety measure of it. I'm just saying on a personal level, I'm struggling with that because I feel like people have been set up now financially to kind of fail. That's something that they thought that they could do. So I'm not leaning one way or the other. I'm just saying I'm feeling for those individuals right now, and I'm a bit of a catch for me at the moment. Your thoughts?
I feel the catch. And I think you speak to the right issues. This is the situation we're trying to rectify to bring it all together. And yet you make it hard for the ones who jumped in and had wrong advice. You're thinking.
Yeah, I mean, people are trying to stay in their homes right now, and it's not a small expense. It's not a small expense, and I'm just acknowledging that.
Competent advice.
Yeah, can I say
Very
something?
great.
So you said people are trying to stay in their homes. I would probably want to amend that to say some people are trying to stay in their homes. Some people were 47 on the list that I came up with initially. Many of those were not people trying to stay in their homes. Those were people who bought homes that were available for families to live in, but instead they bought them as an investment to short-term rent them. And see, that's, if we want to, there's a spectrum here. There isn't a bottom, like people are struggling and trying to stay in their home, and now $5,000 for an alarm system is going to kill their, they might have to move. That is, I would bet that is a rare situation. Even in Easthampton, that is a rare circumstance. That the majority circumstance are people that have the money to actually build an accessory dwelling unit to short-term rent. Those are $250,000, $300,000. I've issued a permit for one for $400,000. That's not a small investment, but they know they're going to get that back pretty quickly. They do the numbers. So when we talk about who this is serving and the safety level that we're asking for in this, who that's serving, it's not meant to put people who are struggling to stay in their home out of their home because they would have to put in an alarm system if they only do one room. And I think, you know, a spouse dies and now what am I going to do? There are those people, and I believe that those can be found and we can help those people. And I would donate $5,000 to a person in that situation to put an alarm system in their home. I can do that. I mean, I just don't, I'm sorry, but I know more than about this, perhaps because I've looked into it a lot, not just in this community, but others. And there are people who are doing this not just to stay in their home. They're doing it to make money.
Sure.
And that's it. And I just want to make sure that that's part of the equation here, that it's not just, you know, having to have people move out of their home if they've got to put an alarm system in their home.
Sure. There's no question that there are some people who use this as revenue, but I think part of that is their livelihood.
No doubt. But what is their livelihood? What is it, their livelihood or their lifestyle? What is it? You know, I mean,
Oh, I'm not gonna try to figure that out. That's not my responsibility. I'm just saying that people have come here and said, I put a lot of money into this, and part of that was the financial choice that I made that helps me to be able to live my life, right? And I don't think that any of those people, based on the conversation that I've had, have exorbitant lifestyles, right? I think they were just looking for an investment.
And
so that's all I'm saying.
all I'm saying is $5,000 to them is not an issue. That's all.
Yeah, I don't
It's not
know
a
that.
make or break kind of thing. It's not like this is just something that should have happened already, but because of lack of oversight of the town or recognition of what should have happened, it sounds like now they're being cast as victims of the city, and the city should therefore allow for unsafe conditions to continue.
And I think that's what we're trying to do is address those things. But I think the problem with coulda, shoulda, woulda, it didn't, right? And I think that those people are caught. That's all I'm saying. I'm just acknowledging the fact that people were caught, right? And I feel for that. I feel for them. That's all I'm trying to say. And I respect your work completely.
I just asked the committee, please, you know, look at the safety issues of this, and this is something that we can take care of here. I don't want tragedy to happen on my watch, period. And you know, this is the way that we can help to avoid that. I want to be one of these, you know, these statistics here on these papers. So.
I hear that. Do other people have any other thoughts? Do we want to?
I just had a quick question. It would seem to me that any new units, in back in the case you said, oh, approved a permit for $400,000 to build an accessory dwelling unit, that if it were to be used for short-term rentals, would have to have all the bells and whistles, have the sprinkler system, have,
Well, by default, it would seem like it should, but as I spoke earlier about it, ADUs are pretty small by design. They're meant to be a space that somebody can rent at prevailing rental rates, but be paying less because it's a small house. So once you start using it as a short-term rental, it becomes much more lucrative. You know, it's like you have a little, well, it's not, I'm actually not happy that Easthampton is pretty in the minority for allowing ADUs to be used as a short-term rental anyway. And I've already spoken as much as I was going to speak about that because it seemed like it was just going to happen anyway. So not happy about that, but I'm still not sure that an ADU, it's a brand new place. And under the building code, it doesn't say anything about the size of it. It says a dwelling, you know, short-term rental, it would be sprinkled. But again, I'm not a big fan of, you know, certain, most situations, sprinklers, you know, apartment buildings, restaurants, nightclubs, you know, go for it. I mean, you can't put enough sprinklers in, but an ADU used as short-term rental, I don't know. It really, I wouldn't think so. I mean, well, it's not an existing building. See, now that you bring up a good point, if I can't waive the sprinklers in that unless you were to go to a sprinklers appeals board or go to the BBRS because of the building thing. So you could appeal in order to put sprinklers in an ADU, but it's a new building, not existing. It's only under the existing building code and existing building that I have the authority to accept an alternative to that fire protection safety system.
thank you. I don't have any other questions.
Can I make a comment? Please, thank you. It looks maybe like I'm the only person representing short-term rental hosts, so I just want to speak to that we care about safety too. It feels like it's setting up an us-them situation right now, and I care a lot about the people that rent from me. So I'm not here to be standing like, no, we don't want to do that. I think we all need to work together to figure out how to make it safe and feasible and all this stuff. I'm a little, you know, I own a historical home. And, you know, David, when you said, yeah, somebody threw a Frisbee and set off the sprinkler, that's of concern to me because my floorboards are this big and I can't replace those. So it's not that I don't want to have sprinklers. I don't want people to die, right? That's my main goal is to get through my life without killing anybody, right? And at the same time, I do have an investment and I don't want someone to throw a Frisbee and ruin it. So I'm trying how to balance what I need to do, if that makes sense.
There are exceptions in the building code for historic buildings.
Okay.
For that very reason. I mean, not so much water damage, but invasiveness of systems, you know, installation of systems, not drilling holes and putting things all over. Even though a lot of historic buildings do have sprinkler systems, you can see them, but there are exceptions that can be exercised. So, yeah, it's a good point.
Thank you. I'm just hoping we can all work together because it seems kind of at the discretion of certain things. And I'm not, I mean, some of this is clear. Like I've already researched doing a low voltage system and all that, but you know, I do want to save people's lives. I also hope I never have a fire, right? So.
And again, don't think that we're coming at that, that we think that everybody who has short-term rentals is not safety conscious. That's not the case, right? But we have to have like a blanket policy, a blanket regulations for everyone, right? So for almost 8 years, I've been your code enforcement, your fire code enforcement officer in this community, right? Some of the businesses in the community are wonderful. They do a great job. They're right there. Other ones, it's a struggle. They don't want to spend money. They want to cut corners and stuff. And so it's challenging, right? So the code is there across the board, so everyone is equal. But I do want to acknowledge that there are most people who own businesses like this and what have you, want to do the right things. And most of the businesses out there that I've dealt with want to do the right things and will be compliant because they want people to be safe in their businesses. So absolutely, it's just, we just got to make sure everybody is that way. That's why we should go in, we should inspect, regularly to make sure everybody's keeping up on this. Because the other thing too is that I tell with a lot of my customers, businesses out there, inspectors, I realize you're busy, you're doing your business and stuff, and sometimes you forget things or things go by the wayside. I get it, and that's why I'm here to come in every year to be that eyes, that's that safety eyes to look at things and to help you work through to come into compliance and stuff. And that's all. I always try to do that, is to always try to work with folks to come into compliance. So, but I just want to acknowledge that.
Thank you.
No, absolutely.
Do we want, to make a motion to, are we ready to accept these?
Add, I would be certainly happy to add the additions. And that's what we'd be voting on, not on the whole motion.
Right. We're voting on the additions, but we already voted.
We already voted on motion,
Yeah,
on the whole amount.
on the whole, yeah.
So you're suggesting we add,
So I'll take a motion to adopt the, additions from the fire department and from the building inspector.
so moved.
Second.
So we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Great. So that's concluded.
Yeah, thank you very much.
And again, I want to be clear, right? Like, I respect the work that you all do, right? Very much so. Right? And I think that for the three of us, I think we've been caught in a lot of fear and anxiety and from our hosts and members of the community, right? And recognizing that you all are trying to do right by
Yeah, just trying to keep people
people
safe.
who are visiting our community, right? And staying here. And so I think that we're just trying to figure those things out. And so we feel all of that, right? And I think that we try to navigate all of those emotions. So I appreciate the three of you very much. And I appreciate you as well.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So you had another item to talk about,
Signs?
the dispatch position, but, they're not here right now, but I don't know if that's something that you have the opportunity. I know that you wanted to talk to the mayoral candidates, but now we have a mayor, but I wasn't sure if you would have that conversation, or you felt comfortable kind of moving forward with that, or,
I would like to bring it up the next time.
okay, so that's, yeah, I wasn't sure if you would have that opportunity to. Okay. So we don't have anything else on our agenda, so I will take a motion to adjourn.
So
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Okay, great. Everyone else's aye as well. So thank you so much.
This government meeting is brought to you by Eastworks and our local cable subscribers.